Game 63, Fulham versus Brighton on the 2nd of March 2024. Titled, Down, Down, Deeper and Down. So today we were looking at a family drive to London for my wife and Rocco to spend some time with our son Tom whilst I worked. Tom had popped home to go out with his brother on the previous night and stayed in his old bedroom overnight. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, yes, until Tom arrived home not feeling too well. In fact, he really didn't feel well enough to go out Friday night, but he did. Saturday morning and a rain check ensued. Tom had been coughing all night long and was clearly unwell. So my wife and Rocco decide to stay at home and let our son go home and back to his bed to rest. Anyway, Tom jumps in the car, not the electric one, another one, sits in the back and wears a mask. The journey to the Queen Elizabeth Street SE12JE underground car park was a little more stressful than I would have liked. I think it's about 71 miles, and as per usual it says it's going to take around 1 hour 58 minutes to get there. Look, let me qualify this right here and now. I know I'm going to drive into London, the capital city of England, on a Saturday morning, and it will be busy. But it never fails to annoy me that you seem to get within 12 miles of your destination as fast as Usain Bolt doing the 100 metres, but then you glance at the sat-nav, and here is the punch to the pit of the stomach, 12 miles in around 72 minutes. I know I've done it before. I know it'll always be this way. But for some unknown reason today, my head looks at the sat-nav and just doesn't want the hassle. Every light, every stop-start, every person in the wrong lane becomes an anger layer, and one by one they top each other up. Tom's cough and snot fest in the back is making me want to get him home quicker as well, poor lad. And whilst all this is going on, my left knee is painful. Clutch in, clutch out, and on repeat for an hour. Pain equals anger, and then I have to deal with another lost soul driving in London as they cause an inadvertent block trying to go from left to the right lanes, blocking traffic, including me. I think Sick Note in the back can see the imaginary steam coming out of my ears and apologises for nothing other than feeling unwell and making me drive. He didn't make me drive. It was going to be a good day out for my wife, dog and you. It's not his fault, but his plaintive apology does nothing more than add a layer to my guilt, pain and frustration. Sadly, my knees are a constant source of pain, and with me, pain erodes any tolerance of situations quicker than it should. But then I think back to the restless night we all endured. But I do have an issue, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. But then again, I might be. But I find my dreams tend to affect my mindset on waking. If it's a little on the downside, it can really make me want to stay in bed and forget about the day, or conversely, not really want to talk. You see, I really am controlled by my mind, and as I've said before, I really have to work with it as much as possible. The mind is so strong. I think I've woken up a bit frazzled and fed up, and this current situation has topped up my angerometer, which is like a power bar in a computer game. My knee is now very sore, giving those stabbing pains in various positions while sat in the car with the handbrake on and the clutch out. Luckily I didn't need a piss or a poo, or I feel there could have been an eruption of emotion with the next minor stoppage. I negotiate the final day of my journey, well that's what it felt like, drop Tom off at his flat nearby my destination and park up. I rifle through my work bag to see if I have some Cocodamol with me. Thankfully I do, and take a couple with some water in the car parking space underground. I get out of the car and immediately straightening out my knee, the pain is so bad that I groan. Now I have steps and what will be a 5 to 10 minute walk, which will now be a painful 15 minute or more amble. The walk is more akin to a shuffle now. This once doable walk is now problematic as the limit of my walking decreases. My ever decreasing walking distance makes my pain-free world smaller. I do walk it in a fashion, but now realise as I hit uneven surfaces that I don't lift my painful knee up far enough to give ground clearance for the said uneven surfaces, which invariably leads to stumbles. No more knee talk. It really is boring for you. The London Bridge area is busy and no more than usual. A variety of people wandering, rushing, or simply having an enjoyable Saturday out in the capital. It's a wee bit chilly but bright. I have that seminal moment where I wander past shops who are busy and then think, wow, if they are spending a £5 each in there, and with around 30 people in there, that's 150 quid taken in 5 minutes. And there are 12 5-minute portions in an hour, meaning 1,800 quid an hour, and over 8 hours, which equates to 14,400 quid a day. I then frazzle my head at the thought of one shop doing that, or maybe more. Then I think how many shops there are in this area, let alone London, and that's not forgetting supermarkets and petrol stations. Jeez, just how much money is there in this country? Yet still, people are struggling. The ones not in London having a great time, or any other city. I am stopped by a young man who wants me to help fight knife crime. I elect not to sign up for a monthly subscription or donation, but give a donation there and then. I then moved on a little further towards London Bridge Station concourse when I'm accosted by yet another chugger for another charity. I moved past them swiftly, feeling very guilty. There are so many charitable foundations out there, all providing a worthwhile cause. Some are minor in terms of the effect on society from a personal aspect, but all absolutely worthwhile. Why are the public being emotionally blackmailed when the government need to do more? These services are required. Palliative care nurses, for one, are a must. Knife crime needs to stop. Poverty needs to be sorted out. And misusers of assistance need to be found out too. It's too big a problem for my tiny mind to take in. But wouldn't it be nice to have trust in our government nowadays? Sadly, years of differing parties and governments have brought a real sense of apathy to this old groaner. That's why the young are targeted. They believe wholeheartedly in the premise of your vote counts. It makes a difference. But they will only learn, as we all have over the years. But by that time, they will be me, and the youngsters will still be targeted again. I have to say, in my opinion, the current government and the COVID situation has caused me more concern than usual. Yes, COVID came along and the world was not ready for it, let alone our own government. But some of the dodgy dealings and some of the refusals to answer questions around the COVID inquiry has really concerned me. Don't even start me on COVID itself. That just scares me. Once upon a time in World War II films, the Germans wore one colour uniform and a helmet, and we wore another colour uniform, and our planes displayed different badges. So from whatever perspective, you knew your opposition, so to speak. COVID for me, in a really naive way, showed that you don't need an army, air force, navy, or nuclear deterrent to reduce the world to a shambles. Just a virus or a germ in the air. A quick check of the internet says around 7 million people have lost their lives through COVID. That could be more, we'll never know. But the world stopped. That is something we all know. As Scrooge said in A Christmas Carol about those in workhouses when asked for a donation for those less fortunate than himself, are the workhouses and prisons still in operation? Yes, Mr. Scrooge, they are, but many would rather die than go to those establishments. Whereupon Scrooge replies, and I am paraphrasing this a lot, if they would rather die, then they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. COVID thinned a few out, didn't it? Overtly, a conspiracy theory by yours truly, but we really didn't seem to care for the elderly enough to me. Those who didn't contribute any more to society, but those who were only taking out of the country's coffers, didn't half take a hit. My mindset ahead of this game was slipping, wasn't it? Down, down, deeper and down for the status quo fans out there. Fulham, who'd won away at Manchester United last time out against a Brighton side who were in a rough trot presently. Goals from Wilson, from a lovely little curler from the edge of the box after good work from Muniz, and then Muniz himself heading in an inviting cross from Wilson for 2-0 at the break. At half-time, my own performance niggled at me a bit. Occasionally, I found the speed of thought and movement of mouth not as per normal. Two words merging sort of thing. It troubled me, and I then think exasperated me, as it seemed I was looking for it, the merging of the words that is, so it became more frequent through thought and occurring maybe naturally. The second half I slowed everything up to be mindful, but again I may have overdone the thinking. What, me? And of course slip-ups because I was being overly extra cautious. Not just that, and a Traore goal for Fulham to wrap up a 3-0 win, but now mentally condemning myself as being a twat, which then averted my gaze away from the job I should have been doing correctly. I had by the end of the game hit a new low for the day, cursing myself, berating myself, and wondering what is exactly up with me. So with my mental state low, angry and pissed off, I set back to the underground car park. I stumble again before that 60s classic song runs through my head. You know the one. There he goes, just a-walking down the street, singing do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do, sweating profusely and shuffling his feet with a do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do. He looks glum, he looks sad, he looks glum, he looks sad, and he knows he is a twat. Whoa, 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 whoa. I smile inwardly as I know no one knows what's going on between my lug holes or behind the eyes. I get in the car and a certain part of my anatomy, I said no more news, was in trouble. I come up from down below and set the sat-nav for home. It's not pleasant, as it warns of a hold-up a long way ahead. But first I will have 55 minutes of clutch-in, clutch-out pain to deal with, whilst I mull over my less-than-perfect commentary performance. Nobody notices apart from me, but my mind is like a caricaturist, embellishing every negative thought until it has the desired negative effect on me. Finally, escaping the London outskirts and the traffic, the delay I was forewarned of duly hits home and adds around another 40 minutes to my commute. So when I return home, frazzled, frustrated, angry at myself and others on the roads in and out of London, indeed, my wife, who has waited for me to arrive, would rather I hadn't. Self-absorbed, self-indulgent and angry. 3 of my many negative skill sets on show. Why do it? Who knows? But as I said, my dreams can affect when arising out of bed and the day unfolds from there. It is going to be a long, hard life for me if I continue to think everything will go swimmingly for the rest of my days. Oh, let me think about that comment. Cue Status Quo singing down, down, deeper and down. Game 64, Shandong Taishang versus Yokohama Mariners on the 6th of March 2024, titled When the Red Light Comes On. I lay in bed trying to sleep. Before I went to bed, I knew I had to be up before my normal time of arising, 5:15 a.m. I don't normally get up till 8 a.m. I need to be in West London 2 hours before kick-off, and I've decided to drive after reserving a car parking space just down the road from the studios. But having fell asleep mentally on stirring around 3 hours after going to bed and glancing at the time, my mind tells me I still have 3 hours to kip. Result, maybe. But then my mind decides that I should not go into a deep sleep as I might miss the alarm. So on the hour, every hour, and in between, I wait to glance at the time and reiterate to myself mentally, do not fall into a deep sleep, and continually mentally work out my diminishing sleep time. Obviously, on getting up, I'm knackered. Great! I get ready and set off. I'm in plenty of time. The drive in is as expected. I have no radio or music on, just my own thoughts and my own mind voice for company. I park up in plenty of time for check-in. I mosey on into the studio and ask which booth I will be frequenting before heading out to the mini supermarket for a coffee from the machine in the store. After around an hour and 20 in the car, not conversing or interacting with anybody, just me head, I sort of switched off towards any chit-chat or conversation. This must appear rude to people, but ultimately I couldn't give a stuff. That's where I'm sat in my own head. But here is the good side of my mental quirkiness. My mind gives me a dressing down. It tells me how rude I am and states clearly that that is not what others are expecting. So, like a director, as somebody approaches, it shouts, "And action!" The red light comes on, and I am on camera. Sure enough, I perform like a human being, saying the right things, quickly ad-libbing and making people smile, until I exit stage right to my booth for isolation. That, in a moment, is what I do. When faced by persons or situations, I act accordingly. I suppose we all do it, but I can say mine is an act. My wife has told me on numerous occasions, why does everyone else get the nice selfie and I don't? Sadly though, in recent times I have found I have ignored the red light and not performed, and it's so uncomfortable. The silence as I ready myself in the booth for the AFC Champions League game is punctuated by a voice through the cans who asks for a microphone check. Ding! The light comes on, bright red, and lo and behold I perform to this faceless voice ahead of the microphone check. There is a chuckle through the cans. He replies, "You can go for it now," so I do, before he asks for a faux goal shout. And again, for effect, I make up a silly goal shout, but still manage to go through the vocal range for testing purposes. The voice says thanks, and it's back to solitude for another 30 minutes till I do the ident for the broadcasters. It is China versus Japan effectively in this second leg of the quarterfinal, in which Yokohama lead by a 1-0 from the first leg. I do the broadcaster's ident and have a wander and a wee before sitting quietly awaiting the voice from above to tell me 10 minutes till kick-off, then 5 minutes, etc. A countdown comes through that counts from 10 down to the graphics on the screen and the start of the programme. The red light comes on and I come alive, performing like a canary, chatting to faceless people who are watching the broadcast. The game is very much as expected, with the home side looking for an equaliser on aggregate before Anderson Lopez for the visitors extends the away side Yokohama's lead. They score another midway through the second half to put the game out of reach for Shandong. Shandong pull one back for consolation in stoppage time. I pack up my things and have a brief chat with Brenners. We both saw the same game and we look ahead to other games and situations coming up for ourselves. I feel a little preoccupied but hope it doesn't show during our conversation. I meander back to the car and silla it. Step inside, love. I'm here all week. On the drive home, which is less intense than any drive going there, and by that I mean when you're driving to an appointment, there's always an intensity of not being late and getting there on time. Driving home, you want to get home as soon as possible, but you sort of know you'll get there, so therefore it's not so intense. I concentrate on driving and slip into talking to myself again. I run through things and react to imaginary situations that will never be as I thought. Soon I'm pulling off the motorway and nearing the end of my driver's solitude. I am a little tired, and when I get home I know I have a UEFA Champions League game to do tonight at the Gary Briggs studio. I spend some time with my wife as she works, and then I go and have a lay down on the bed, and have a guess what? I'm out like a light. I haven't put on my sleep apnea mask and wake myself up by almost asphyxiating myself and gasping for breath. Whatever the length of time that had elapsed was enough for me to feel as though I didn't know where I was, who I am, and to feel a little blurred around the edges. My wife shouts up and asks if all is okay, and stunned I reply, yes. Before I was diagnosed some years ago, I have to say I don't actually know how I survived. Fatigue during the days and lack of sleep at nights was so bad. I could and might have fallen asleep in my car when driving, and I often popped out on a site visit to drive to a remote car park to fall asleep, as the snoring would be awful and not affect anybody. When tested with the clinic's machine, it took them all of half an hour to ring me and say get back here as soon as possible. The machine may be as sexy as a pair of big pants, but it has changed my sleep for the better, and my wife now gets a good night's sleep too. Just an aside, Paris 2016. And my youngest son took me to Paris for the Northern Ireland versus Germany game at the Parc des Princes. We took the Eurostar to Paris and stayed overnight in London before staying overnight in Paris before heading home the next day. On the first night we awoke in separate beds but in the same room, and I was greeted with a "Fuck me, Dad, you snore" claim. He said he'd hardly slept, but it will be okay as he is a machine. Travelled to Paris and found our hotel. We had a wander before even then my knees started playing up. We travelled via tube to the Parc des Princes, and I've never witnessed anything like that tube journey. It was rammed with Northern Irish supporters, and the tube/metro carriage was bouncing up and down to the tune of Will Griggs on Fire. It was crazy, and it was a tube party, and I don't actually think it was just our carriage. We alighted and we were carried away with the tides of Northern Irish fans heading to the game. We arrived at the legendary venue, made famous for me by Five Nations games as I grew up, not the fact it's now Paris Saint-Germain's home ground. Our seats were behind one goal and in amongst the German fans, sadly not in the party part. Germany won 1-0, but for me as I looked down the ground to the other goal, from the halfway line on my right, all the way behind the far end goal were Northern Irish fans singing constantly, Will Griggs on Fire. Now if you know this song, there is a pause before the na 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 na, and the crowd would stop and then dance, every one of them, limbs going everywhere during the na 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 na. It was a spectacle to behold, as was the overnight scenario in our bedroom in Paris. We came out and went to the Eiffel Tower base where there was a fans park, and we bumped into somebody from Norwich who knew my uncle before we retired to the bedroom, absolutely cream crackered. As I fell asleep quickly due to my undiagnosed sleep apnea, my snoring / self-asphyxiation led me to seeing the machine. 1 stood in the middle of the room. 2 a little later, staring at me in disbelief at my snoring loudness. To 3, dragging his mattress across the room to go into the bathroom with his mattress to get some sleep. I had actually broken the machine. He wanted to smother me, but not with love, poor kid. So, sleep apnea is a killer in the making, one way or another. But now coming round, I start to focus on the next game I have. Best I have a bite to eat before that red light comes on again.